Let's get chilly. Welcome back to Let's Chill, the official, unofficial Minnesota Wind Chill, Minnesota Strike podcast. I'm Jeff.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Kane.
And we are off of a weekend of three Frisbee games for Minnesota Ultimate Frisbee. Two from the Strike, one from the Wind Chill. Let's just get into it. I'm going to recap the games here. So first we started with the Strike. The Strike, as we said, had a doubleheader weekend. They traveled first to Madison, confirmed it was Breese Stevens Field, to play the Milwaukee Monarchs, where they won 11-10 in overtime. And it was an interesting game. I don't know if it was a crazy game or an electric game necessarily. I don't know how to describe it, but going into overtime is always exciting. Though conditions were extremely windy. It was reminiscent, I think, of 2024 championship weekend for the Minnesota Wind Chill, where both teams kind of played that field positioning game. It was a pretty low-scoring game. It was kind of whoever can get into the other end zone, pin the other team back, and hope for a turnover, kind of. And I know I'm kind of diluting it, but I think that was honestly kind of the theme of it, right? I mean, there wasn't too much more, but it was nice to get that first win for the Strike. I think often the team was clicking a little bit more. The wind helped and hurt. And they got a notch in the win column. And then they traveled to Indianapolis to face the Red. This team, the Red, I kind of have a little bit, almost earmarked a little bit because I covered the Red. I commentated for that game last year. So I'm a little bit more familiar with the players, and I was a little bit more in depth with kind of their strategy. The Red so first of all, the Strike lost 8-15. It was a really close game all throughout. Really, the first three quarters, first 2.5 quarters, very close, very few breaks. And if there was a break, it seemed like the other team then would get a break. It was a very back and forth game. I think halfway through the third quarter, definitely into the fourth quarter, seemed like the Strike kind of just fell apart. I think they definitely got tired. The Reds' zone defense was very effective, especially at maybe not even limiting the offense, but just tiring out the offense, tiring out the team. Even though the Strike did a great job working around the zone, their handlers moved the disc very, very well. I think that's exactly what we talked about in our keys to the game. They did a great job with disc movement, but ultimately I think fatigue just caught up to them with that doubleheader weekend, and they fell 8-15. So the final score doesn't show how good of a game, how close of a game it was. But it definitely was a good game, and there's a lot of positives that we can take away from that game. And then moving to Seafoam Stadium, the Minnesota Wind Chill came home. It was their kind of homecoming from championship weekend. Unfortunately, it did not go the Wind Chill's way. They lost to the Union 16-11. And honestly, if you took away that first quarter, it was a very good game. I think I went quarter by quarter. They did still technically lose even if you took out the fourth quarter or the first quarter. But the Wind Chill and the Union stayed on par with each other throughout the last three quarters. I think it just took them a quarter to warm up, and they really never caught up. The game was really cold, like really, really cold. My fingers were fine. Still took basically my whole drive home for my fingers to even defrost. And honestly, I think that did probably have an effect. The wind may or may not have had an effect on the game. I mean, I think it always does, but it seemed like for me, I saw the offense for the Wind Chill just not finding it. They weren't clicking. Turnovers. I don't have turn. Oh yeah. Well, the Union had 14 blocks. The Wind Chill only had 8, and the Union had 11 break points where the Wind Chill only had 5. And I think that's where we can see the offense really kind of slipped. I mean, giving up 11 break points is not great, and only getting 5 break points, that's not the Wind Chill's game. They weren't quite clicking, and they dropped their home opener, bringing them to 1-1. Still early in the season. There's a lot to look forward to, but that's where we're at with the weekend recap. I'm gonna share my screen, and we'll do. I found a clip here. It's kind of two. It's one clip, 2 back-to-back plays, from the Wind Chill game, And I think the first play, I'm not gonna sound the first play too long because it is a mistake. It's more a negative play, but I do want to share it. But the first play kind of shows that the offensive miscues and the offensive kind of blunders. But then the second play shows kind of how the wind chill were able to click and they moved the disc really well. So here I'll click play, and what we're gonna see eventually is a Matt Raider cut that it was just misread. So you'll see Matt Raider here, kind of at the middle of the screen, and I believe that's Leo Salvo Fernandez with the disc. Raider cuts in, and then you can kind of see, and it kind of happens quickly here, but they're both right now kind of throwing up their hands. I don't know if they're looking maybe for a call. I can't quite tell because they're both kind of looking maybe toward a ref. Um, but ultimately, it really was just a misread of Raider cutting in, and then he cut out really quick. I think Salvo Fernandez didn't expect him to cut back out. He was just waiting for the under. Um, and honestly, that wasn't maybe the story of the game, but it was a good example of how the wind chill just weren't quite clicking throughout the game on offense. I mean, that's two of their primary offensive players, not quite making it. I'm going to see if I can skip effectively here because the next point, the Union score here. Actually, I think they just scored. Um, so here's from the poll. What we're going to see in this next play is, I think, a series of 6 passes or so. Very quick timing from the wind chill. Very nice cutter continuation, like we always talk about. And I'll spoil it a little bit. This is the end of the quarter. The wind chill score within, I mean, we got 28 seconds on the clock. I don't think they quite eat up the whole. No, maybe they do eat up the whole clock. Um, I'll stop talking maybe, but just kind of watch the cutter movement. We got their rebound lineup. So this looks like a D line. We got Justin Burnett and James Pollard on, but the offense or the wind chill, as we know, put out that line. Dylan DeClerc's here when they get broken. And a great grab by Burt to save it with 5 seconds left on the clock for the goal. Um, so as I was talking through that, what did you guys see um, with that disc movement with offensive movement? That's
Hello, podcast. That's right. We're still here. It's not
Oh yeah.
just.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. I was just thinking about that while you were doing the commentating. No, you found a good clip. You did good on the intro. I was gonna comment on the strike game, uh, as well, but I didn't know if I should like, interject at that point, and you just kind of moved on. So I didn't want to.
Yeah, we
I
probably
know, I
should
know, we
have.
don't want to linger too long on the recaps. As far as this clip goes, I think that first one you showed, the first like miscue, really was emblematic of how that first quarter really felt for me. And when we get to the keys to the game, I'll kind of touch more on like what that should look like moving forward. But yeah, this whole game felt like the story of Chicago versus Minnesota, right? Where like we just couldn't get them off our back until it was too late. And yeah, it's hard to watch.
I think, in this clip with that disc movement going downfield, I think a big part of that is that Minnesota's playing fast. Throughout a lot of the game, with these windy conditions, it was freezing cold out. A lot of the players were, setting up, getting their lines, trying to run these cuts, and Chicago's defense just had a read on Minnesota that Minnesota's offense didn't have on one another. Like you showed in that first clip, like Minnesota's offense just was not clicking with one another. But here, Minnesota just keeps moving the discs, keeps those continuations cuts going, keeps, going downfield. And I sort of said this about like the strike last week. They look their best when they're not letting the other team get set up. Minnesota's offense is just destroying Chicago's defense on this point. They basically have zero chance to set up any solid defense, and Minnesota just gets to walk all the way down the field very quickly.
Which again is interesting because this is their D line, really. It's kind of their prime line because they just got broken and they'll throw that defense out. So it's kind of interesting that you say that, Jay, because this is an offensive point, but it's a defensive heavy line. And I wonder if that makes a difference. I mean, I know they still run the same offense, they still have the same system, but that is kind of an interesting point. I mean, going to what you just said, Jay, look at right here. The disc is 30 yards down the line or down the field. Burt caught it in the end zone. So they've made 30 yards of passes. And James Pollard and Bevon are pretty much wide open at this point. Like they have not had the defense has not had time to find their matchups to get set on two of the most, dangerous cutters on this line right now when Justin Burnett catches it. And then I think he finds Pollard right here, still just like wide open in the middle of the field.
Yeah, you can see Chicago's like Pollard is already looking. I believe he's passing the. I don't know who he passed to. That was Bergmeyer there, who got
That's
it to DeClerc.
Yeah, and DeClerc is wide open. Who is guarding DeClerc right here, right? Like, no one in this vicinity is matched up against him.
Yeah, and Chicago has one player sort of playing safety in the back, but as we can see from DeClerc's next throw, it doesn't matter because Bergmeyer's going to take that space right underneath him. There is
Yeah.
no way for him to get there.
Yeah.
And DeClerc's throw almost goes a little errant here. It's a little bit too soon, I want to say.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, it was an excellent play by Minnesota to just keep the disc moving, to see Chicago's defense lagging behind them, and once they get that open space, just to keep booking it down the field.
Yeah, and something too that we talked about. I'll just kind of play this clip one more time as we keep talking. Maybe I'll even go 0.5 speed. It seemed like part of it was maybe a communication issue. Maybe part of it was a weather issue. You can chalk up a lot of things, but it just felt like a lot of those 50-50s throughout the game were going Chicago's way, which like that's again a lot of issues. Part of it's just a stat issue, right? Like they just got those 50-50s truly in Chicago's favor. Chicago did a great job boxing us out. And this is like on our offensive points. That's kind of maybe the Windchill's strategy. Again, like we talked about with the strike, like we talked about with the championship weekend last year. In crappy conditions, they huck it. They put it downfield, they play field positioning, and most of the time that works. And on Saturday, it just did not work. Like that jump from Burnett to save that disc. Like he knows how precious that throw is, even if it's a relatively routine throw. And it's just
love
a
the
nice
throw.
play.
I love the throw from Pollard to Bergmeyer here. That throw is amazing.
I'll also point out that Bergmeyer caught the pole and caught the point. He's along the disc the whole way down the field, which is really awesome to see. Kane, any last thoughts on this play, or if you want to talk about the strike? We did gloss over that. I think we have a little bit of time. We can quickly go over that.
I'll say one more thing about the Chicago Minnesota game.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the rematch. For the strike games, first off, the doubleheader weekend, incredibly fun to watch. I was really happy to have two days of frisbee to watch, or I guess 2 days of strike frisbee to watch, and then 1 day of Minnesota as well. The Milwaukee game I thought was actually not as good of a game, despite it being a win, as opposed to the Indy game. I do think that the weather was a big factor. That being said, I think that the weather is a factor professional teams and championship teams have to be able to perform in. And this was definitely a test. This whole weekend was a test. I mean, just being a doubleheader in general. I think that on the second day of it, the game against Indy, they looked a lot more polished, especially in the first 2 quarters. Like we said, it felt like their offense was connecting. The disc movement through the zone defense was beautiful. Like I mentioned last week, like handler movement is like the most important thing to a consistent offense. And I feel like the Strike were really, really hitting that in the first 2 quarters. And be it fatigue, be it the Indy defense just making an adjustment to kind of take advantage of the fact that it was a doubleheader. The Strike just kind of fell apart. So I'd like to see, I know we're not doing a preview, but I'm looking forward to seeing their next games if they can put together a complete full 4 quarters and keep that consistent offense all the way throughout.
Yeah. I think the commentator said this, and I might have like just misheard, and I did not fact check this, I'll be honest. I think the Red might have also had a doubleheader weekend. I think Um, and so like you can kind of point to that of being like, oh, there's a level playing field, but still like sometimes it's going to affect one team more than others. Striker traveling, obviously that makes a big difference. Um, but what we saw from Strike, especially in that second game, again, I think we all agreed in our group chat too. We were talking like that second game looked like more of a championship team, looked way cleaner, even though it was a loss, and not exactly a blowout loss, but 15-8. It's like not a close game. Um, but it looked like a much better game, and I think we were all like much more impressed with that. They looked off their first and second choices sometimes, like we talked about in our keys to the game last week. They were patient, they were chilly with a zone defense. Like it's really easy and hard to be chilly. I think like sometimes it's kind of an uncomfortable defense. You just want to get rid of the disc, but sometimes too it's a little bit easier to be chilly because there are sometimes fewer options. They did a great
Right.
job at finding their person and figuring out where they can get the disc. They took lateral movement when they needed to and then look deep. Like they didn't take these huge unnecessary deep looks just to take it. So
Just to fact check you, Indy did not play a doubleheader.
okay.
Um, and
I misheard it or I heard something different then.
yeah, I want to say that I think if the Strike played Indy game one, or if it wasn't a doubleheader weekend, I
Yep.
think the Strike have a really good chance of winning that game. Not to discredit Indy or
Nope.
anything like that. Um, but I think the Strike would have a really good chance of hanging in there. Like we said, it looked like fatigue was really getting to them because it was a really tight game. I mean, I think they were down by 2 points at half,
Yeah.
and it really easily could have been 1 point at half. But I want to talk a bit more about the Monarchs game because in that game, it felt like it was really a 50-50 of who was going to win. And it felt like the 50-50 went the Strike's favor. Um, and I don't want to say the Strike like won based off of luck. It was definitely an even matchup there. But I think that the Monarchs kind of lost because of bad luck. They didn't Strike
Right.
didn't beat the Monarchs by a hefty margin or because they were firing on all cylinders. They beat the Monarchs because they got that last point in overtime and were able to not let the Monarchs score again.
Hmm.
And that's basically it. The windy conditions were hurting both teams, and the Strike I had a chance to actually close it out and not let it get to overtime. They just needed to complete one or two more passes at the end of the fourth quarter, and they dropped the disc right on the end zone, right on the goal line. Monarchs picked it up and punched it in for a quick last second break, and that was the end of the game. That's how that was at the end of the quarter. So like the Strike
Yep.
had the ability to really shut that down and kind of let the Monarchs get back into that game there.
Yeah. Good point. And again, it's about field positioning. It's about clutching up or staying chilly or making that pass. Like, yeah, it's those little things that I think I said like I don't remember exactly what my key to the game was, but more or less, fundamentals, back to the basics. Make the play that you need to make. Don't get too big. And I don't think they got too big, but yeah, and they still won. Like we're being too critical for a win, but I think sometimes those wins you want to be critical. Like how can we get better? What else can we do now to get that next win? So, but no, shout out to Strike for being the only Minnesota Frisbee team to win this weekend. So
Thank you.
we have something positive to talk about, and we're like,
Seriously.
we're the classic
And
Minnesota sports
we're harping
fans.
on
I
the
know,
one
like
win.
well, okay, well the Twins lost their 13-game win streak, and of course I'm sitting there listening to the game, like, are you kidding me? We suck. Why are we losing this game? like we
Classic.
didn't just win 13 games in a row, but there's always something.
Well, Wolves in 5. All right. Shall
Kane,
we
yeah, Kane,
transition
why don't you
over
transition
to
us?
the keys to the game? Looking forward to this next weekend here. There's only one Minnesota Frisbee game this week, as opposed to the three this last weekend, which is so sad. We're going to Pittsburgh. We're going to be facing the Thunderbirds. Exciting. The Thunderbirds are 2-1, or are they 1-1 now? They're 2 and
They're
1.
2-1.
Yeah, because they took that L to Madison. They won
Yep.
against Indy. They won against Detroit.
Yep.
Um, I think this game. I think we in the preview pod we talked about this being a guaranteed win. I'd like to see Minnesota take another win here. Doing so, focusing on a couple keys, especially in light of the Chicago game. A couple things that we talked about, specifically offense. That leads into my first key to the game, which would be Minnesota needs to establish momentum early on offense. I don't just mean early in the game, although that is true. I mean early on each individual point. Uh,
Hmm.
that clip is a perfect example of it. I think quick disc movement and hitting continuation cuts, hitting that next guy before hitting the reset is going to be incredibly important in order to establish momentum early on points to get it out of the end zone. Again, going back to that clip, we saw, oh my gosh, blank on the name here. Bergmeyer
Bert.
pick it up, get it out right away here. There were already two options waiting for him. We had Bivon coming down the field. I think having all those early looks, and just getting it, that extra 10, 15 yards out of the end zone can get yourself some momentum, can get your cutters downfield a little bit more time to get open, or a little bit less time to get guarded, I guess I should say. It gives them
Yep.
a shorter window for the defender to get onto them where they can see the disc is already here and they can make that next cut. So I think my first key to the game would be to establish momentum on offense early in individual points, but then also early in the game. If we win the first quarter like we did against Indy, I think we have a better chance of winning as opposed to only scoring 1 point in the first quarter.
Yeah.
It took them 11 minutes to score a point, guys.
Yeah, that was bad. I think for me, that was kind of where I was going with that key to the game, Kane, is
Absolutely.
score a point, right? Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, establish momentum early, establish it early in the game, early in the point, and like get on the scoreboard. Because I think just morally, I think if they had a point or two and then got outscored by, if Union went on a 4 point run, that hurts way less than 4-0, or was it 3-0, or whatever it actually was when they finally scored. Like that hurts, man, when you take a whole quarter. So to kind of add on to yours, just get on the scoreboard, get that momentum going. Um, yeah, you guys are champions for a reason, like play that championship game that you know how to play, that you did. So
Yeah, I've got nothing more to add to that.
Yeah, I guess I'll say one more thing to it. Um, like you said, Jeff, play at that championship level. The move of De Klerk to Bergmeyer, that throw, I actually wasn't in the stands. I was getting food at this point in time, so I didn't actually get to see the play from above. I've seen the replay now, obviously. Um, De Klerk like really, really waited and timed that throw perfectly. And in my head, I'm like, that's a professional move right there. Like, that's a dude who knows what the heck he's doing.
mhm.
Because a person who just, an amateur at frisbee is looking around looking for that reset, and he's seen Bergmeyer Street and he's like, okay, I'm going to time this perfectly. And so I think that, yeah, we just need to gain that confidence, establish it early, and just play the game. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yep.
The second key to the game I have here is something that Minnesota's actually been doing positively that I'd like to see us continue to do, and that is red zone execution. We are at a 90% red zone execution through 2 games. Against
Nice.
Chicago, we had a 90% red zone execution, which is a good stat, right? It's a really good stat. We only had 9 attempts, so that's unfortunate. Um, but against Indy, I think we went 15 for 17 or something like that. We had
Wow.
played a few more attempts and we had a lot more success rate. Um, so when the Winchell get close to the end zone, it's near guaranteed that they're going to score. And I think that kind of plays off of that earlier key to the game I had, which was if you gain that momentum early in the field, then by the time you're within that last, 20 yards, it's really easy to hit that one last cut. If you're not taking 30 passes to get there and you're taking 4, then no one's as tired and you're able to execute. And I'm not saying that like Minnesota's only executing in the red zone. 'Cause obviously, we're doing it consistently, but I think that in order to be a consistent offense, we need to keep that number up.
I know in recent years the red zone percentage has been lower for the wind chill. We were more of a deep look team. We didn't excel on small ball as much, or in the red zone. We struggled to punch it in. So it was nice to see that number up after 2 games. Hopefully that stays up. Yeah, I mean that De Klerk to Bergmeyer pass that we keep talking about is a good example of that. Where like I think De Klerk will tell you that throw needs to be up a little bit more, but I don't think he wanted that throw up with the wind, with defenders there. I think he wanted maybe a layout, maybe not quite a layout, but like low, probably waist high or lower. I think that was intentional. And so but smart passes like that rather than like a floaty thing to give Bergmeyer more time, right? Like I think that throw, that cut was very intentional, and it leads to points. It leads to that increased percentage. Yeah, that's a good key to the game.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I mean, in recent years, just right, the red zone conversion percentage has been lower. And I mean, Minnesota scored 11 points on Saturday, and 8 of those came from the red zone.
Wow.
So that's a pretty impressive. Like Minnesota had some issues getting into the red zone, but once they found the red zone, they were punching those in the majority of the time. So I think that's a good call out by Kane to just get it to the red zone and then keep punching it in.
Nice.
All right. Well, those are the keys to the game. Just a quick recap for the listeners. Number one is for the windshield to make sure they establish momentum early on offense. And key number two is to continue to execute on the red zone attempts. I don't know who
I
had players to watch.
I
Let's do
did.
that next.
And I would say I have some players who will actually probably get those keys to the game rolling. The first player to watch this week, I'm going to say is Matt Rader. Had a very, very massive standout game one and put up some good numbers in game two as well, despite it being a loss. Rader is explosive. He can catch basically any disc. He's constantly streaking down the field. He has the momentum. Um, I think that if we want to succeed, if Minnesota wants to succeed going forward, Rader is going to have to be a big part of this offense.
I think him and Snyder are going to need to play a really big role in getting the field down or getting the team downfield, even if they're not catching it in the end zone, hitting that 60-yard catch, hit that down cut, and you're getting it into the red zone, I think is just as impactful as catching a goal if that catch leads to a goal. And I think Raider, I would love to see his hockey assist numbers. I think it's got to be high.
Let's say Raiders hockey assist numbers right now are one for this year.
Oh, never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. I got egg on my mouth.
No, but I mean, I lean into that. Keep going with it because I think he could get that number up, and I think is what you want to say, right? I mean, given his role on the team, maybe last year he had 18 at the end of the year. Um, is that okay?
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh, I no, go ahead if you want to keep going.
No,
I had the
I think
stats
that's
up.
pretty much it, really. I
Yep.
think he's gonna get more hockey assists than that. Then
Yeah. I mean, I think he's consistent. He's reliable. I think that the team will look to him to make those big plays. Pittsburgh isn't necessarily a huge team, if I'm remembering correctly, unless they've made some additions. I know with the Radicals and with the Union, they are generally taller teams, and so Raider is able to make those like huge skies and really make an impact. But I think he'll still be impactful downfield like that in those big plays. Like you said, Kane, whether or not he's in the end zone or if he's making that last, throw or whatever. Um, yeah, he's reliable. He's consistent.
And I think another player to watch this upcoming week is a rookie, actually. Um, Number 96, Max Hanscom, defensive player. We didn't get to see much of him this last weekend. He played 11 points, but didn't really do much on the field. But in the game against Indy, he had 3 blocks and threw an assist. Played 22 points, had 4 completions, 100% completion percentage. Um, Defensive player, all 22 points on defense. Looks pretty good. Is a rookie. We haven't been talking about rookies at all this season. We've been talking about some of our more veteran players in the team. So against Pittsburgh, I expect Minnesota's defense to be out more than they were against Chicago. So I expect, if Max Hanscom is going to be at that game, I expect him to be, playing on that defensive line, getting those, reps in and getting some blocks. Because, I mean, I think the only player who had more blocks than him was Justin Burnett with 4. So
Wow.
yeah, he wasn't like he was a quiet player in the game against Indy. He has been doing well. He had a block against Chicago as well. So he's already had 4 blocks for the season. yeah, I think we can look to him to be making some good defensive plays against Pittsburgh.
It's a good call out. I quickly looked him up to see if he was a practice player or not, and he's not. He's full rostered. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm a big rookie guy. I like to see kind of who else we've got. We can recycle the same names over and over, so that's a good call out, especially against Pittsburgh. Like I do kind of hate to use this as a crutch, but I think Pittsburgh is those kinds of teams are the opportunity for these quieter, younger, newer players to get their chance to shine, to kind of show off. I mean, Thomas Schopp last year in his first game with the wind chill was against Pittsburgh, and he had a great game. And it was a great kind of introduction to the fans to the wind chill. So yeah, that's I love that. Great call out.
Fact check me on this one, Jeff. He's another big body, isn't he?
Oh,
He's like six something.
it doesn't
He's
say.
tall. Okay, because I think I
I don't
remember
have
seeing
his
him on the line and him being like really tall as well.
I don't have
Um,
his card here with me.
oh yeah, you gotta get his trading card. Go
Yeah.
online and get your trading cards. Um, yeah, I think defensively is where Minnesota has historically obviously been very consistent. And I think in order for us to kind of establish more of a consistent identity on offense, we might need to, bring in a couple newer pieces to the defense and allow pieces like uh Bivon to take
Mhm.
more of an offensive role or whatever it is. I'm not gonna sit here
Yep.
and pretend to coach or make lines or whatever. But I think that having a rookie player to watch is incredible. Shout out Max. Get you on the pod sometime.
Yeah, Max, if you're
Yeah.
listening, we'd love
Yeah,
to get you on the
listening.
pod.
Wow.
Haven't said
That's
that
the
in a
first
minute.
time. Wow.
That's crazy.
Real quick with 4 minutes left. I want to kind of give my quick player of the game or player to watch is Sam Berglund. He was not suited up for the wind chill. He officially was rostered. He was on the active roster last weekend, but he said it was a game day decision where he was having tightness in his side, I believe. And they're just kind of taking it day by day. He didn't seem worried about it, but I'm just curious to see if he will be playing against Pittsburgh and what he'll look like. Um, Off the top of my head, I was going to look him up. I was looking up Max has Hanscom. If he actually played against Indy or not. Do you guys remember if he did? I can look.
He did.
He did. No, he did
I don't
not.
think he did.
He did not. So it will be his debut, which and we know 2024 is a quiet year too with his injuries. So um, definitely, I think he's going to be a player to watch, honestly, all season after last year. Now, 2 games into this year, and he hasn't played yet. So we'll keep an eye out. Okay. Well, they are at Pittsburgh this weekend. Um, Next weekend. Oh shoot, I looked up for the strike. I didn't look up for the wind chill. Um, but the strike are at home next weekend.
Mhm.
So we'll come out and show out for that. We'll preview that game next week. So for this week, we just get ready. Go check out New Bohemia in Golden Valley. That's where the official watch party is for the wind chill, and cheer on the team as they take on the Thunderbirds. In the meantime, stay chilly and ka-chow.
Stay chilly.
Ciao. Stay chilly.
Ciao.